For those who do not know me, my name is Ronnie. I am a donor egg mom in waiting. And what that just means is I was told by my doctor that in order for me to conceive, or my best chances of bringing a baby home, was through donor conception. So I got a donor. I have had 3 transfers. They all either failed or had miscarriages. So I am on the road to transfer number 4. Had a couple of delays, but I am here and I am trucking through. You will start seeing some posts probably in the next couple of weeks of some things that I have done. I would like to welcome to the stage Tatiana. Now, normally this space is talked about, we talk about donor conception, but I feel that regular IVF journeys should also be shared in this space sometimes, just because maybe you don't even know how to get started doing IVF. And so I was very excited. We had someone who wasn't able to do it. And guess who just stepped up to the plate and said, girl, put me down. And this is Tatiana, where she's going to start. Should go ahead and share your journey, and wherever you want to start, what made you turn to doing IVF?
Oh my gosh, so many different things. I got to the point where I was at an age and I was comfortable in a relationship. And after having an ectopic prior, well, it's going to be 9 years now. And wow, it feels like yesterday. I had to have my right fallopian tube removed because the baby implanted in the tube and I suffered a rupture. Had to have emergency surgery once I arrived at the hospital. Literally, they did an ultrasound. They were like, there's a lot of blood and fluid in my abdomen, and I have to get the surgery or I could potentially die. And so after having that life-altering surgery, I woke up the next day knowing that my chances for conceiving naturally had drastically plummeted, with the fact that I had one tube and the tube that I had was partially blocked. So I always knew that eventually I would have to come down this road, but I was never in that space of accepting it until I met my husband. And everything with him happened so fast. We met.
Were you in pain? How did you find out it ruptured?
Oh my gosh. So I knew for a couple weeks, like when I got pregnant, I immediately, the first thing that I remembered is I had appendicitis when I was 14. So when I had appendicitis when I was 14, I was told by that particular hospital that there was massive scar tissue from having the surgery. Because when I was 14, this was like early 2000s, they weren't really doing laparoscopic. They were basically doing the real deal. And so with the way they had to do the surgery, because for some reason I have a thing where stuff ruptures. So my appendix ruptured when I was 14. Yeah, it started the catalyst of everything. And my mother was told this, but she never informed me until I turned like 16, 17. Don't know why, don't know if it's her motherly instincts of protecting me, but once I, started going to the GYN, I was told of scar tissue, I was told of all different things. So I always had it in my head that the likelihood of having to do fertility was very high from that. But when I got pregnant, I was like, oh, maybe they don't know what they're talking about. Maybe, something miracle happened. And so when I did get pregnant, I had an awful GYN. I told her from the start, like, I know my body and this doesn't feel like, it was my first time being pregnant, but at the same time, I kind of knew with all these different things that I've known for years that the likelihood was really high. And she refused to do ultrasound. She refused to do any further testing. Kept telling me it's too early based off your period. And so for weeks, I was going back and forth, begging her to just, look, let's try to see if there's no heartbeat, there's nothing that you see. I would like to terminate the pregnancy just for the fact that I know that it's not where it's supposed to. And so when I got up to what I was supposed to be 9 weeks and there was still nothing, no fetal pole, no sac, nothing, she sent me home. So I went home. This was January 10th. And this was a Monday. I was supposed to be at work, but I woke up not feeling too well. And everybody already knew I was pregnant at the time. So my manager, I was waitressing, was like, take the day off, come back tomorrow. So I went to sleep. I woke up at 6 o'clock and I had sharp pains at my side. And it wasn't like period cramps or anything. It was like stabbing pains, as if something was just stabbing me repeatedly over and over with no relief. And so I woke up, I called my mom. I'm like, I feel something very weird. I don't know what it is, you know. She's like, oh, maybe it's just your uterus or something. And this was what the doctor was telling me too. Your uterus is expanding. You're going to feel, I'm like, this is not it. It's in
Right.
one area and it keeps constantly bothering me. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go to the hospital. I woke up literally from the bed to the floor. Like I couldn't move. Like I was in so much pain. I'm literally crawling out of the bed. And my sister happened to have keys to my apartment. I called her, I said, I can't get out. I can't walk. I can't move. Something is wrong. And, you know, luckily enough for her, she, you know, went off her first instinct. She's like, let's get you to the hospital. And so we went to the hospital and, you know, everything happened so fast. And so from there, that started the whole trajectory of knowing I had to do IVF. But
Right.
that relationship didn't last. That pregnancy really made everything in that relationship really die down. And so from there, we broke up. I met my husband a couple years later. We met in like, I want to say the year before. We got together February, got married in October that same year.
Oh, wow.
Very, very, very fast courtship. And he knew from the start because that was my main thing. I want to be with somebody who understands that the likelihood of having a baby is very high. He was fine with it.
Right.
Said, what can we do? So from there, we started with CNY first. I wasn't really too sure what I was doing with CNY. I just seen so many people going there. I saw so many people having babies. I saw so many people in my situation just, you know, having kids. And I'm like, you know what? They offer fertility. It's not affordable. Like I just have to figure out how I can get this $7,000 medication that they were asking for. And that wasn't a challenge at all. Like I'm very resourceful. I went in open mind, knew that, you know, the likelihood probably isn't really high because I was seeing so many people saying they've done multiple rounds. And
Right.
so with CNY, I did not really like it. It wasn't for me. I'll never bash them because they've given so many people, I personally know children, but for me, I just didn't like the way they handled me.
Right.
With that particular cycle, I went to Albany thinking less people really trying to go to Syracuse to see the Dr. Coates. Anyway, Kiltz, I think his name.
Kilts.
There we go. So I'm like, it's going to be better. No. At that time, I was 33 when I started. They did the first cycle. They retrieved 16 embryos, but I only stemmed for about 8 days. And for me, I felt that was kind of short because I'm like, at 8 days, how much can you really go unless you're really over medicating me? So out of the 16, only 2 made it to fertilize. And out of those 2, only 1 made it to freeze. And that was a day 3. So I'm literally on the phone. Like we stayed up there the whole week because this was during COVID where everything was just shut down. I was working from home and I wasn't able to do the transfer. Found out I was overstimulated from the next clinic that I went to.
Oh, wow.
So when I got, back to the transfer, I already went in there not feeling it was going to take. And I don't know if it was just like my heart trying to like prepare myself for the worst, but I went in there and I already told my husband, I said, I don't feel like anything worked. And for him, he's like one of those people who's optimistic and I'm not. So I'm like, I don't feel it work. And true to my fashion, it did not work. And this is how I know that CNY knows something happened because I called Dr. Hill and I said, Lo, I, at 32, retrieving so many of these embryos and not so many of these eggs and not having anything to show for it, like something went wrong. He literally offered me to have the next cycle because I was a cash paying half off if I decided to go back.
CNY is really good of making things right. And not a lot of clinics do that, but I have heard many stories of CNY making things right and making sure, they are busy. I will say that about CNY, but they do help when you're with them as well as trying to right the wrongs because every clinic messes up and a lot of clinics just say, oh, well.
Yeah, I give them that. That was the one thing I said. even though they weren't for me, I appreciated that he went back and was like, you know what, something happened. I'm not going to say it's our fault. I'm not going to say it's your fault. But
Right.
if you want to come back, I will give you your cycle half off. But by then, my trust was already gone and I did
Right.
not work for me. And so that's when I started doing more research and I came across Amazon. So in the group, when I first started, it wasn't too many people. Many people didn't know the whole process of it. But I was like, you know what? If I'm going to do this, I'm going to make sure I know everything, the ins and outs. So if this does work for me, I could help the next person. So I went in there already with that notion that if this works, I'm going to keep helping. And I ended up working at Amazon. First, I worked at a warehouse in Manhattan on 34th Street. Terrible conditions. It was hot. It was wet. It was smelly. You had to do a 2-hour mandatory in a frozen freezer that was below, I think, 5 degrees or something. It was something insane. Like you had to be in a whole suit from head to toe to be in there. And you have to be in there mandatory 2 hours. I was able to do my first round. I ended up changing clinics. I found like the male fertility doctor was African American. I felt very comfortable with them. You know, for some people it's not a thing, but for me it's just knowing, because a lot of places that I was going prior to starting were telling me like I'm overweight and all this, and because they were going through all these standards that does not reflect me as an African American woman, to find a doctor who was like, no, you're not overweight. We're just going to check. We're going to see. Like, he took all my records. He said, I'm requesting all your records, just signed off. He took the records. He literally went and pinpoint exactly where the error happened and told me they over medicated you. What they did is they double dosed what you were supposed to get to make your cycle shorter instead of stretching it out. So when he started me with a low dose, and then he gave me, instead of Menopur, he gave me low dose HCG.
Okay.
And so that definitely changed the number of not only like mature eggs, but it also, the stems helped me, because during the time I was doing with CNY, I was having headaches. I wasn't feeling good. I couldn't keep food down. I had all these side effects that I didn't contribute to fertility treatment till I ended up going to this clinic, and they stretched out my cycle. The first round was 18 days, and then the second retrieval was 17 days. And during the whole time of them doing that, they coached me through everything. Like they had me going in the morning to check, and I went literally almost every day until it was time for the retrieval. The retrieval was another issue, but it wasn't anything with them. I had an awful first retrieval because I have veins that like collapse. And so they had to stick me like 20 something times. Yes, 20 something times, just to get the first round. But the second one went pretty smooth. By then they learned their mistakes. They had a trained person who'd been, you know, sticking and getting blood and doing all that stuff for years. So it was an in and out thing. But the thing that I liked through the whole process, he was telling me, look, I know people can promise you everything, but I'm going to make sure that you leave with a baby. It may not be the first round. It may not be the second, but I'm going to guarantee that you leave with a baby. And I didn't want that because I've already been through my stuff with CNY. So I didn't want that. And so when I finally got to the point of getting the transfer done, like it was May 16th. I remember because it's my sister-in-law's birthday. And when we walked into the office, it was an afternoon versus like I was having the first transfer was like 8 o'clock in the morning. This one was like at 1. And I'm like, I don't know about the time, but he's like, no, believe me, it works. It's perfect. I have you on, you know, all these things so it can lead up to it's perfect. And like when the whole entire thing happened, it felt so much different. My husband's recording, we're laughing, we're, you know, giggling, we're kicking jokes and things. And so when I went home, I was like, all right, I'm going to pray on it. I'm going to pray on it this time because I didn't really have faith the first time, but I'm going to pray on it. But I'm also going to do some extra stuff that I researched. And so I was drinking like pineapple juice with hot water in the morning and the afternoon. I wore socks. I made sure the house was warm. I drank soups. I didn't have anything cold, like literally nothing. Everything was room temperature. And I'm like, I'm going to add these extra stuff, but then I'm going to also pray at the same time. And then I prayed almost every day until I'm like, all right, I'm going to test, because what got me was when we were doing the transfer, we were going to do 1.
Okay.
And he looked at me and he was like, are you doing 1 or 2? And I'm like, what do you mean? Because I'm coming from CNY. I only had 1, so it wasn't like it was an option.
Right.
I'm like, I don't know. Let me talk to my husband because my husband has identical twins that him and his child's mother had naturally. So I went in there and I'm like, I don't know. So I asked my husband, he's like, what do you think? I'm like, I would love to do two, but in my head, I wasn't thinking possibility of twins. I'm just like, maybe two will give me a better odd, which I think is really like not smart to think, but like, maybe two will give me a better odds of one of them hanging out for a little bit. So I went in there, we transferred the two. And other people who had twins was like, hey, after 3 days, you can kind of start testing. I didn't want to, but I'm like, you know what? Let's see. So I started testing day 3, negative. 3, negative. Day 4, negative. So I'm like, what is happening? Maybe they both not there. And I'm like, over here in my head, I'm like, okay, well, at least I have one more transfer left with Amazon. What I did is I started applying for other jobs, and I ended up getting Tractor Supply I want to say like a couple weeks after the transfer. I ended up starting at Tractor Supply, and I stayed there my whole pregnancy. So after day 5, when it came back positive, it didn't register with me at all because I took the test at Tractor Supply, which is very weird in a way.
Well, people do POI anywhere, so you know what? What's the pregnancy test at work? You know what I'm saying?
So I took it at Tractor Supply. I seen the faint line, but I'm like, it was like a blue dye. So I'm like, I don't trust these. And, being in, the IVF circle, about blue dyes are not the best ones. So I said, you know what? When I get off, I'm going to go get another one because there's a Walmart up the block. So I took it, I wrapped it in paper, threw it out. I called my sister, my older sister, and I'm like, hey, I took a test. I don't know. It looks positive, but I don't know. She's like, oh, where is it? Let me see. So I'm like, damn, I got to go back to the bathroom.
Yes, you can go dig in the trash.
Stop digging in the trash. Somebody comes in, and I'm like, I dropped my phone in here. She's like, oh, okay. She left out. I got the test. I run into the bathroom. I call my sister. I said, look. And she's like, oh, that's positive. I said, how you know? She's like, that's positive. If you want to entertain yourself, you can get another one later. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to get another one later. I'm going to do it with my husband. So I called him and I'm like, hey, we're going to test today. He's like, why don't you just wait? Because like my husband, like I said, he goes with the flow of everything.
Right.
And he likes things that make sense. He's like, why are you testing if we're going to go and get our beta in like 3 days? And I'm like, I can't wait because I need to know, because if it didn't work, I want to start drinking again because I gave up liquor doing this whole fertility treatment thing. So let me know. So I bought the test, went back home, took it again, and it came back immediately. So I'm like, oh, okay, somebody's hanging out in there. Don't know who, but somebody is. And so when we went back to the beta, the numbers weren't even really high. That's why I didn't really think twins. The first beta was 126.
Yeah.
So I'm like, that's a normal range compared to, everybody that I'm around. I'm like, that's really nothing. And at the same time, I had a friend who was already currently pregnant, and she was like, for her singleton was like 169, 180.
Right.
So I'm like, it's a single. It's no, like, I'm happy still, don't get me wrong, but I'm like, oh, okay, well, I wonder if it's a boy or the girl, because we transferred a boy and a girl. So he did the beta. He's like, we're going to repeat it in 2 days. They repeated. The number still didn't climb. It was like, by now, after 2 or 3 days, I think it was like 2 something, I believe so. So he's like, all right, we're going to come back and we're going to do ultrasound and all this other stuff. So I ended up not getting my ultrasound because I'm a teacher and we were at the height of COVID in New York. I got COVID.
No.
So I got COVID and I'm literally walking sluggish. I'm at work because we're still wearing masks and all that other stuff. And at this time, everybody in my job keeps getting COVID. Like, it's literally bouncing back and forth like a tennis ball. And so I'm like, you know what? I don't feel good, but it doesn't feel like the flu. Right. I still smell, I could still taste. I didn't have any real symptoms other than feeling like crap because I was throwing up from I swear, from the time I took the first test, I just immediately started throwing up. I couldn't hold anything, not even water. So I'm like, all right, let me go to the hospital, check for COVID, and also see if I need fluids or something because I'm not eating anything. And it's now, I'm supposed to be around 7. No, not 7. I'm around maybe 6.5, something like that. So I go to the hospital. They tell me you tested positive for COVID, but you also tested positive for pregnancy. And I'm like, I already know that. So the doctor was like, hey, based on your charts, because this is the same hospital that did my surgery for my topic, and based on your records, we know you've had a topic. Would you like to do an ultrasound? So I'm like, why not? What's worse? I'm stuck here anyway. You guys may have me quarantined. I can't leave this room. I can only go from one place to the next. So why not? So they do the ultrasound. They bring me back. By now they have me on IVs because she's like, you're severely dehydrated. So let's try to get you some fluids. So I'm sitting there with the IVs. I'm on the phone, talking to my husband, like literally giving him details of everything. And she's like, all right, well, I just need to, go over your results because we can't show you the ultrasound in the hospital. We could only describe what it is, or you can read it on your own. So I'm like, okay, well, I already know I'm pregnant. The worst you can tell me is that it's ectopic again. She's like, no, it's not. Congratulations. I'm like, okay, great. What did you see? She's like, are you aware that you're pregnant with twins? I was like, I'm not pregnant with twins. I know I'm pregnant. She's like, no, we've seen two sacs, 2 fluttering heartbeats. And I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah, they're measuring. One is measuring 6 weeks and 3 days. One is measuring 6 weeks and 1 day. But we see definitely 2. And I said, in me? She's like, yeah. I'm like, there has to be.
Check again.
There's no way. She's like, I wish I could show you the pictures, but I can't because that's just not what we do. We can't show you. But here's the report. So I'm staring at the report and I'm reading it backwards, forward, all kinds of stuff. I'm like, this is impossible. Like this, can't be. So at this time, I'm like, is it since you can't tell me, is it identical? Is it fraternal? She's like, it's fraternal because it's separate sex. So we definitely know that. So now in my head, I'm like, okay, the shock of COVID was one, but now being pregnant with twins, yeah, that's not something I'm going to get used to. So I called my husband and he was like, what happened? I'm like, yo, babe, there's 2. He said, 2 what? 2 sacs, 2 heartbeats, 2 everything. So he's like, oh, snap. What the hell are we going to do?
Y'all do know y'all made the decision to put 2 in, right?
We did, but you know what? And this is the crazy thing. And this is why I keep telling a lot of people who want twins. It wasn't just like, we said, okay, we want twins and that's it. My doctor is very diligent. He's like, listen, you have to consent to the fact that if you do have twins, you understand that they can split multiple times and put you at risk. Because he's like, I'm not going to even lie to you, because by this time I was like 34, I believe, or so. He's like, you're considered advanced maternal age. And now that you're doing IVF, you're even more in that bracket.
Right.
So you have to understand the risk factors that it comes for you as well as the babies. So I had to literally sign off saying that I was aware of that before even doing that. So it was a whole counseling session before doing any of that. So I was aware of it, but like I said, coming from somebody who had a topic, somebody who did a transfer and didn't stick, your head is like, what's the worst that could happen? Twins. Okay. But you're thinking it increases your chances, but not thinking it increases your chances of twins. So for me, it wasn't registering till all of that happened. And I love my kids. Don't get me wrong. I would never take away from it. But if I could, I tell my husband this all the time, and it feels wrong saying it, but if I can do it knowing all the stuff and all the complications that came after having them, I would not have transferred to.
Well, the thing is, and I'll just do just a little, because I don't want anybody watching this and saying, well, you were able to do it. Number one, she's middle of her 30s. So the fact that he allowed her to transfer to, and the only reason why I think maybe he allowed it is because you had an ectopic pregnancy. So he's basically saying you transferred one, it didn't work. Because once you test embryos, there's a stronger possibility that that embryo is going to stick. And you're not old, you're not older, you're middle of your 30s. So that is why they made you sign off on the world, because me being older, and I have PGS tested embryos. And because I have failed transfers, my doctor may or would toy with the idea of me doing 2, because that would probably maybe increase my chances. But if you've never done IVF before, and I'm glad that you're speaking on this, more embryos do not guarantee more babies. She's already saying that she felt like I'm just going to try to get one out of the two.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody goes into it thinking, oh, if I put three, that means I'll get, I'll increase my chances. A lot of times it doesn't. But if you have untested embryos, they will sometimes allow you to do more than one because we don't really know if that embryo is normal or not. So the fact that she was able to, in the middle of her 30s, transfer two tested embryos, he probably was like, I'm not doing this no more.
You already said that.
And if you probably try to go back to her clinic, they probably have different rules because things just change. It was the middle of COVID. So there are a lot of maybe reasons, we don't know why, but understand you're starting IVF, you're testing your embryos, you ask them to transfer two, be prepared for them to say no.
Mm-hmm.
And if especially if you're not over 40, like you're in the middle of your 30s, early 30s, that's not something that they're usually going to toy unless you've had multiple pregnancy losses. Then they may toy with the fact of using tested embryos more than one. Because progeny now, if you have progeny insurance now, they're not even allowing you. They've done research. They've done, they're talking to medical experts who are basically saying no.
Also with my doctor, the one thing that he stressed is you had the ectopic, you did the transfer, it didn't work. Your age is really a factor, and the fact
Right.
that these things leading to is the reason why I'm toying with the idea. But
Right.
now, as we get ready for possibly of doing another, he already is not doing any of that because most of
Right.
the that I do have are higher grades. So he's not even playing with that idea, even though I'm 38 now. He's not
Right.
entertaining that because he's seen the difficulty. The pregnancy was super difficult. I was
Right.
from the time I was pregnant to the time I had them. I couldn't keep water down. I couldn't keep food down. I was constantly at the hospital. And once I had them, like my son had complications with the umbilical cord. There was so many things that came with a twin pregnancy. And then I wasn't gaining any weight. I literally stayed the same weight and I ended up losing in between. By the second trimester, I lost 15 pounds.
Oh,
And I
wow.
also gained 20 pounds. So I couldn't even support the pregnancy because I'm still super small with a big stomach. I had back pains. I had bladder pain. I had everything you could think of. And that's why I tell a lot of people it's great to say I have twins, but the complications did not even equal. And then after I had them, I had to get my hernia repaired 5 weeks after delivery because the hernia was pushing out my stomach so badly I couldn't even lift them as infants. So it's a lot of complications that came with it.
Right. I mean, pregnancy, what people don't realize is pregnancy just in general is dangerous. You could potentially lose your life.
Mhm.
So, and being older and even, 35 and up, that increases your risk of, preeclampsia, your blood pressure going early because we already know, especially being melanated, they like to take our babies early. Everybody else, they let them, oh, you can stay to 40 weeks, with twins. But I'm sure with you, they were like,
No, my doctor, I ended up keeping the same doctor who did my surgery from the topic. So I've had the same OBGYN for 9 years now.
Right.
And when I got pregnant, the first thing he said is, I have a maternal fetal, you're going to start today. And the maternal fetal's next door. So go next door, see what he says, and then come back. And he literally, when I say is a saving grace, you need to call me. Like everything that happened from conception to pregnancy to after, he was there. When I had postpartum really bad, he called my mother who lives in Florida and had my mother on the phone, had me talking to him to work out my feelings. How do you feel today? Do you want to talk? I don't want to give you medication because I know this is something you need to shake off. Like he is super supportive. And he's this little tiny 5'1" Jewish doctor who had my best interest since the day I met him. And he has made sure, okay, you need to take this. You need to do this. You're going 37 weeks, Tatiana. I'm not keeping them babies any longer. You're not gaining weight. You're still super sick. The maternal fetal sees you. I was at the point towards the end of my third, not even my third, the end of my second. I was seeing both of them once a week.
Right.
Literally there all the time. And then on top of that, at the hospital where he's coming out of his house, like my hospital is in Rockville Center, Queens. He lived all the way in Suffolk County. He's coming late at night to come and check and make sure I was okay. And then on top of that, he had 6 other pregnant twin women. So he was constantly at the hospital.
Oh, wow.
I need a break. There's 6 of you that I have to see every week. Like, I need a break. Like, he literally had so many twin pregnancies. But the complications were just so brutal to the point where I'm like, I told my husband, I'm like, we have all these embryos. Like, I really don't know if I can handle another pregnancy, but I didn't really enjoy it. That's the one
Right.
thing I didn't enjoy with everything that happened with it. And just coming from it, like, I'm greatly appreciate like everything that happened. And coming from having that and then being told, like, you probably would never ever, have. And with CNY, the thing that really got me and made me think, like, okay, I may have to look at this journey a little bit different. I may not even be able to use my own embryos, because if at my age I'm getting, this from a retrieval and I'm not having anything to show for it, maybe I do. And the main thing that stuck out to me is them saying possible egg quality. And so with me, I always knew that I would have to navigate which road I'm going. If I'm going to try with my own, if I'm going to have to do donor eggs, I always knew it was between those two. And, I joined your group with the intentions of, okay, if I have to, at least there's a group of women, because I'm already in all these other IVF groups and I'm narrowing down. So maybe I need support in this avenue, because this is where I might have to go. And then when it did work out for me in my favor, I'm like, all right, let me stay in that group, because maybe I'll get to that point of convincing my husband to donate embryos, because I have currently eight embryos, 2 that are considered inconclusive.
Right.
And from what my doctor's telling me, the inconclusive can be a number of things. We could retest and do things, but I know that in my space that I'm happy with my twins. I would love to have another child. But if it's not in my cards, I do want to try to navigate that donor space of donating embryos, because they're great quality. They were retrieved when I was at my best, as far as like weight, as far as like health. Like, I changed everything completely in this journey, because I wasn't sleeping regularly. I wasn't eating properly. I was eating fast food. I didn't exercise. I drank a lot. So I knew I had to change all this. And so when I put my mind to, okay, I'm going to do IVF, I'm going to change my diet. I'm going to not eat red meat. I'm going to eat more fruits and vegetables. I'm going to walk more. I'm going to exercise. I literally seen the change.
Right.
I started taking, all the medications, the cocktail medication CNY told me to take. I downsized it to basically just 3: vitamin D, vitamin C, and CoQ10. Those are the only 3 that I took between those second and third retrievals. And it made a difference, because the qualities that I got was so much higher. I have the embryos, they're like great grades. And then these 2, they came out, they're amazing. They're the loves of my life. Like, I can't see life without them. And I'm happy I went through this, because I made some amazing friends in the journey. I've been, like you said, I'm still in the IVF streets, but now I'm more mindful, because I was that person who was waiting for my turn. And when my turn came, I knew how it felt to be very mindful of other people's journey. So I'm in there. I'll answer. Like, I'll see a couple posts that nobody answered, and if it's something I know, I'll say.
So walk me through this. I'm new.
Mm-hmm.
I've been trying to get pregnant. What tests, what things did they make you do initially before? Now, I know you had the ectopic pregnancy, so you didn't have to do the HSG. They made you skip that part. But what type of blood work did you have to do in order to, because what you have to understand is you have to be a candidate before they even start, or to say that, let's get you started for donor, for an IVF cycle, or they may look at somebody like me and say, you know what, your best chances are donor eggs. So what was the process like of even getting started and going to a clinic?
It was accepting that this is my road. Like I said, I started with CNY. CNY at the time just popped up on my Facebook, just from surfing different groups. I called them. I was told there's an extensive waiting list. So I originally had an appointment in February, I think, of 2022. No, February 2021. And I learned just keep calling them, call them. And I got bumped up. And from there, I did my consultation. They explained to me what the process was. The difference with CNY and other clinics, at least for me, CNY doesn't necessarily give you things you have to do. Everything is optional. If you want sperm analysis, that's optional. If you want to get your cervix checked, if you want to get uterus checked, if you want to get your tube checked, that's optional. Everything they give is optional. The only thing that CNY wanted us to do before we can start is to do a blood panel, so they can know what our levels for everything is, just to know if I have an egg reserve. Also to do an ultrasound to see, you know, what your uterus looks like, to see if you have any eggs, see if your ovaries, if you have cysts, see if you have fibroids. Those were the main things that they did. And that was it. I didn't have anything else that I had to do. Everything else was optional, which was my first mistake. I should have did everything that they offered instead of going with the optional thing. Right. Because the biggest thing that the second clinic said is, if you didn't do any of this, how would they even know if your husband had, you know, viable sperm? How would they know if you were able to even carry? How would they have known if you need to remove that last tube, if there was any fluid? Like, you should have done all of that. Right. So that clinic ended up making me do everything except checking my tube. My husband had to get his semen checked. That was the first thing. Before he even start, he said, we need to know if we need to do extra procedures for your husband. Right. Thank God we didn't need that, but that was the main thing. The next thing he wanted us to do was genetic testing, because we come from two different backgrounds. He wanted to ensure that there was nothing genetically from us that we didn't know that would transfer over to any of the embryos or our children. I'm Haitian and Cuban. My husband's from Honduras. So we do have different genetic makes and different genetic things that we are not aware of. And we ended up finding out this doctor ran about 250 different genetics. And we found out we both have one that's the same. Like, we have alpha thalassemia. He's a silent carrier and I have it. And our daughter ended up having it.
Oh, wow.
So when we found out we had to get a genetic, like, we had to have a whole sit down with a genetic counselor. Yeah. He basically told us our odds. And what they were going to do is, when the twins were born, check their embryo, check their umbilical cords and test it. And they did. And they ended up finding out that she had it. The other thing that they did is I had to do a saline sonogram. I did 4 of them. Those hurt so damn much.
No, we don't have to talk about that. We don't talk about that.
4 of them.
Yeah.
That was the main thing they wanted to do, saline sonogram. And then after doing the saline sonogram, they did a lot of more blood work, just to know, like, our blood types, blood panel, blood screening, STD screening. Right. There was so many different tests. It got to the point where I felt like I was there almost every day for a week doing different tests. So we did a lot of tests before even starting. And then once we got those tests, we had to wait for all the results before we even start the retrieval cycle or stimulant medications at all. And so once that came back, we did the genetic counseling screening. I did 4 of the saline sonograms. His semen analysis came back. Then he started the protocol. And the protocol that he did was based off records from CNY, and he was able to find a happy medium that worked for me. After having that, then we started the Sims, and that was the start of the first retrieval. And then we did a double retrieval, which is basically, once I finished with the retrieval, they gave my body a couple days, and then I was back on Sim medications. And he felt that was the best protocol for me because of my age, because of the fact that I did a retrieval and it didn't yield like great results. And it killed me because I gained 25 pounds from doing all this medication. And it got to the point where I hardly recognized who I was. Like, my face was bloated. I was bloated. I was uncomfortable during the whole entire cycle because he prolonged it from going from 8 to 18 and then to 17. It was a killer. But those are the things that I was willing to do because I'm like, I'm already into it. I'm working at Amazon. I'm doing all these things. And so that was the stuff we had to do before even getting to like all of that.
We call it, if you've never done IVF or done that space, we call it the hurry up and wait. It's the hurry up and wait space. It's the hurry up and get these labs, wait. Hurry up and take these beds, wait. hurry up and get this procedure. Wait, it's a hurry up and wait situation that always gets us, it's not fun. So I'm glad that she's telling you that if you plan on doing IVF, don't think you're gonna go in there in November, start in October right now, and you do a retrieval in 2 weeks. You may not be able to start medication and start that for like a month, 2 months before you even get to that stage. And that's why I tell people, if you know you've been having a hard time conceiving, go ahead and get those tests out the way. Maybe you don't need them. Maybe you won't need IVF, or maybe you won't need other options of medical intervention, but at least you've gotten the test out the way. At least you've done those things. So when it's time to call for day 1 of your cycle, that you're not waiting as long. Because that's the problem, is people get impatient. They get so impatient saying, what's taking so long? Now you're 6 months into this. You've already been tired of doing it. Get the test. Most of the time, this stuff is uncovered underneath your insurance. And if you don't want to go to an IVF clinic, most of the time your doctor can run a lot of these tests. If it's 35 and under, it's a year. They ask you to wait. And then if you're over 35, they ask you to wait 6 months. Did you say that you guys were trying for a certain amount of time? Oh, you just went straight on it. Yeah.
But you know what? Like, when I started, I was already, like I said, everything with my husband happened so fast. But by the time we started, like, as far as with the consultation, like, the consultation got moved from February to December. And so by the time we finished the consultation and was able to even get on the calendar, it was practically a year. But like I said, with CNY, they didn't really ask much questions. Like, you're at your own hands as far as with the whole entire process. Like,
right.
Navigate it how you see fit. And if you're not really vocal and don't really know much, you're not going to do a lot. So by the time we started and we got in, it was like February already. And so we started the process from it. But they didn't, that wasn't anything they asked us at all. They just, why do you feel you need it? And, I gave them my history and everything. And they were like, okay, well, you can start IVF in this year, because by the time I did the consultation, it was already Christmas time, and most of the clinics were closed.
Right.
To move anyway, and they didn't open till like February, so that's why I do everything in February.
Someone said CNY is one of those already familiar with IVF, so you have to advocate for yourself, and I definitely agree. Yeah. They're not going to hold your hand because CNY is very economical. A lot of patients go there because of that reason. So you definitely need to self-advocate for yourself when you're doing the IVF space. And that's why there's so many Facebook groups, there's so many spaces that you can ask those questions, so that when you go in, you already know. Because most of the time, CNY is going to assume that you already know what you're doing, even though you don't. And so if you're looking for a clinic that's going to hold your hand, if I'm going to be honest, a lot of clinics are not going to hold your hand. They're very black and white. They look at those tests. They look and say to you, hey, this is what we recommend. There are very few clinics, like Tatiana's clinic was very positive to you, saying you're not going to leave here without your baby. My clinic told me you're not going to leave here without your baby, so that is rare for a clinic to tell you that, to really have faith that they can do the things that they need to do in order to help you achieve your goal. A lot of them are just going to say, oh, well, and then understand too that if you are doing regular IVF, that, if you cycle so many times, they're going to start giving you other options. So those are things that you need to realize too as well. Now I want to talk to you. I know you said that your pregnancy was hard, and we always just talk about, donor conception, but I want to talk to you because I know you just said that you had postpartum depression. Afterwards is your bond. I think so many people think because you're genetically related that you don't run into issues of connection? Did you run into those issues with your twins of connecting with them? Now, this is your blood. This is your DNA. Did you struggle with those feelings of bonding to your children?
I did. I had moments. I never had anything like psychosis or anything. Because I prepared myself. Like I knew, like what are the signs. My older sister, you know, she had it very bad. She masked it so well, but I can tell with just the way like she just didn't really connect with her firstborn, and he was with me all the time. But I really attributed to like she's a lawyer, she's busy, you know, things like that. So I really knew the signs, but I didn't know it was happening to me till it was happening to me. I got home, you know, we just moved. I moved December 25th, like literally a couple of weeks actually, till I had them. Moved to a new apartment, everything's in boxes, you know, I'm going through like out of my head because their nursery's not ready, their crib's not up. Wasn't prepared for them. I knew when I was gonna have them because my doctor was very vocal. You're gonna have them at 37 weeks. I'm not letting you continue any further than that. So I knew, but at the same time, I'm thinking, oh, it's my first kids. My mom's gonna be here. My sister. I'm thinking I'm gonna have all the support, and I didn't have it. My mom lives in Florida, so she can't get a flight because it's, you know, the middle of Christmas just ended. It's, you know, the new year. So it was so many different things attributing. I moved from one borough from Queens to the Bronx, so it's like different things. Like everything I had is somewhere else. So when I had them, I came home. The first couple of weeks was amazing. Like, you know, my daughter never sleeps through the night, but she would sleep enough where I can sleep too. And then I had moments where, you know, people were coming in and out. My aunts were coming, you know, it's still COVID, but people were respectful. They're coming in, they're helping. Now I'm getting the support I thought I was, you know, going to get originally. So my mind, my spirit, everything was at ease. And then my husband went back to work. I'm in a house with boxes. The crib's still not set up, but we have bassinets. You know, we have different things. Like I'm in my head a lot. I'm thinking, okay, they don't like me like that because my daughter's not sleeping. My daughter doesn't, you know, want to be breastfed. I was in the hospital, you know, trying. I'm with a lactation specialist trying to figure out how to get her a latch. She didn't want it. I'm being told, well, she doesn't want it. Well, try different positions. I'm trying different positions. She's still not latching. My son, amazing. He's latching. He's sleeping through the night. He's not giving me. And with her, it was just a struggle for everything. She didn't want to latch. She didn't want to sleep long enough after a certain time. The only time she would take breast milk is if I pumped it. And at the same time, I'm given a pump from the hospital and it's horrible. So I'm buying a wearable one because maybe if I wear it through the day, I can, you know, I'm doing all these different things to try because everybody's telling me breastfeeding is the best. You need to do this.
Right.
And it's going insane. But at the same time, I have other options. Like my mother's like, well, if it doesn't work, try formula. But I didn't want a formula feed. So I'm like, no, it's so many different things that happen. And then I'm by myself with these kids that I don't feel like that. They're in my space. I don't feel like I'm doing everything right. They're not latching. They're not sleeping. I'm not sleeping. I'm literally going insane. I'm hearing other people's kids running up and down the hall. I'm hearing everything around me. And I'm having all these thoughts like, I'm stuck in this house for like 6 to 8 weeks and I can't do anything. I don't want to take them out because it's still rampant with COVID. Like it's so many different options. And then at the same time, I was not connected. Like my daughter, I love her, but the first couple months she did not love me. And it's like she knew it because anytime I would come around her, she would give me like a smile. But when her dad would come, she would start, you know, with the like every day screaming at the top of her. It's like, I couldn't get her to see I'm here for her. And it went on and on. And then I'm calling my husband, I'm crying, I'm in tears. I'm looking at myself in the mirror and I'm like, look at my body. I look horrible. And then at the same time, my stomach is poking out because I have this hernia, which is making me think that I still look pregnant. Like I had so many different thoughts. And I had thoughts like, okay, maybe if I leave them here and go somewhere else and don't come back, they'll be better off without me. I had thoughts like that. It was insane. And then I'm calling my mother. I'm crying. My mother's crying because she's like, I can't come to Florida. I can't do anything. My doctor's calling. And like, it's so many different things that was happening to the point where I'm like, okay, I need to tell somebody this is how I feel because I'm so used to like, I'm a murder mystery junkie. Like I watch ID in my sleep to the point where my husband's like, no more Snap, no more Wives with Knives, no more of any of that because you watch this too much. So I'm like, I know a lot of these women who suffer through these. And then a documentary, I think of what's her name? It was one of the mothers who was overwhelmed with extreme postpartum psychosis, and she ended up with her children. So I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to get to that point. Who do I talk to? What do I say? And then my husband ended up, taking off from work for weeks. And then in New York, like maternity leave pay sucks.
Right.
I wasn't even making a fraction of what I was doing teaching. I was literally just making enough to buy a stick of gum and diapers. Like it was nothing. And so now
Right.
that income, so now I'm feeling guilty because he's worried about me. He's here every day. And then I felt even more guilty because I had to get surgery. So now he has to be out for 8 weeks. And then when he goes back, he gets injured because he's tired. He's watching me. It's like so many different things. It didn't stop until they were about 7 months. That's when I was able to like really concentrate because by now I was back at work. I was no longer with them. They were in daycare, but I was still thinking, but I'm like, okay, they're with somebody who's better equipped than me. The daycare lady takes better care than them. And it's like all these thoughts. And it went on and on until they were about 7 months.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you're much better now.
I am too, girl.
And I'm so happy that you're sharing that part because, your hormones are all over the place. Even just listening to you and just psychologically, which none of this stuff is going on. Your daughter's just basically feeding off of you. Mm-hmm. And she's like, I don't want to deal with your shenanigans if you don't want to deal with your shenanigans. But there's still that thing of, she doesn't like me. And I think that every mom, at every stage of their children have had those feelings of, this child ain't feeling me, And, I'm happy that this space is existing because someone needs to hear that, what they're going through, and that they are not alone in this. And I encourage, me, I encourage every woman to seek some type of therapy to navigate those things. Your friends are great, but you need someone who is impartial to actually give you some solid advice that works for you, because your friends' advice may not always work for you. Other people's opinions may not work for you. And a therapist is going to help you get all the garble out of your brain, is what I say. And I've heard people say, well, therapy doesn't work for me. And I'm here to tell you, at one point I had about 5 therapists. Did I have to repeat myself to these 5 therapists? Like, did I have to repeat myself 5 different times? Yes. And then what happened is I realized this therapist is not the one for me. And so I dropped them. And then I ended up getting to the therapist that I have now, who I love. But sometimes you may have to shop around and see who is going to work for you. So yes, will you initially have to repeat your story over and over again? Yes, you will. But if it's something that offers you peace of mind, something to help you navigate what you're going through, I think it's worth it. How many therapists did you have? Do you have a therapist?
No.
You don't have a therapist?
But I am currently shopping for one because...
Girl, it's a shop. Throw it in a bag.
I am actually. My older sister, is very transparent. She was, she picked me up and she's on the phone. She's like, hold on, I got to reschedule my therapy session. I'm like, therapy session? It's like, yeah, I talked to a therapist. I said, when? She said, for years. I just kept it secret. I'm like, wow, I didn't know that. She's like, yeah. I go through some struggles. Like, my sister is very, like I said, transparent. She's a lawyer. So she can talk for days, but she went through a lot with having her children. And then even with her sons, one is autistic. And so she goes through a lot. Right. The therapist really helps levels me out. And so I'm looking for one because I really can benefit. when I was going through my postpartum, that was the next step for me to take. But like I said, my doctor became my therapist because he was calling me in between patients. He was calling me at night. He was calling me before he, went back to having to go to the hospital. So I spoke to him on a regular basis. So he was always very vocal. How are you feeling?
Right.
I feel like he was very therapeutic. And so I didn't need to navigate with a therapist at that time, but I know I can benefit from one now because my life is so chaotic. There's so much going on that I can definitely benefit from. So I've been shopping around. I just haven't finalized anything because I'm looking for somebody who's more remote. I don't want to go to office. I'd rather do it like in my free time, like just kicking it back. So I'm trying to find that. There's not too many since, everything opened from COVID. So I'm really just navigating that now, but I'll have one.
Look up therapy for Black girls, and so you can filter remote therapy.
I'm definitely gonna do that when we get off.
Yeah. Someone asked, "Are you still in New York?"
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay. Somebody may put something in the chat.
Oh, gladly take
They
it.
grow therapy online. You can find grow therapy online.
Okay, I'm gonna look into that.
But there are a lot of I'm surprised you said that because a lot of them are. I'm in Georgia and a lot of them don't do in person. So I have a bonus daughter and it took me. I was the opposite. She did not want to do online. She wanted to go into an office and talk to someone. It took me forever to find a therapist for her because nobody was doing in-person therapy anymore. But I do Zoom or I do it's some whatever the health thing is that they have, but I do that with my therapist. But there's definitely therapists that you can get, but therapy for Black girls, grow therapy. I think BetterHelp too will also find you someone that is not expensive either. Always check your insurance.
No, that's what I was thinking.
Make sure you either have mine is covered underneath my medical plan, but I know that some people have what's the other one called? EPA, y'all. I'm drawing a blank. But sometimes you can get sessions underneath there, like 12 sessions a year, and it's covered. So check insurance to make sure that you guys have insurance. The reason why I had 5 therapists because I was, thank you. Because what did I say? EPA? EAP. Yes, thank you very much, my insurance gurus. I should know better. I'm an insurance guru. At the time, my bonus daughter was going through some stuff. And so she had a therapist, and her therapist told me in the middle of COVID, hey, just so you know, your insurance has opened up. And so you get unlimited therapy sessions for people dealing with it. And so I was like, he's like, so she wants to come, she can come anytime she wants to. It's free. I was like, okay. And then that's when I decided to look for therapy. Now I was smart enough to get her a therapist, but not myself. So, but I now have a therapist because of that. So definitely look at those resources. There's a ton since COVID that are out. And so if you definitely want to know if you have one, I would definitely say for me, my therapist, I wanted to find someone who had went through infertility. I know a lot of people look for that. She didn't go through infertility. I had a couple of therapists who went through infertility. We just didn't gel. But I will say about my therapist, she asks a lot of questions. She does research. She comes back, when I have problems struggling. Now, I'm not really struggling anymore with the infertility part, but I definitely struggle, mom stuff and that kind of thing. And she helps me through that. So, but don't be afraid to shop around. Just like with anything, with doctors, as you can see, if you're not getting, I think that the common theme that we've heard is if you're not getting the level of care that you think you deserve, you need to move. So even though a lot of people use CNY, it just didn't work for her. She moved to somewhere where it worked. Don't be afraid to get up and go somewhere else. your OB is not running the test for you, go find another OB. I think we can all say that. Because the fact that you are demanding, and I hate that for you, because this is your life that we're talking about. The fact that you're telling her something is wrong and she's just throwing it off saying it's too early, it's too early. When it's not going to do any harm to do an ultrasound for you. And I know that's something you probably think about all the time.
Very often. Very often, to the point where, like, even with the twin pregnancy, like, I was very happy that I was able to see them, like, literally every week, because it put, like, some of my, like, anxiety at ease, because just coming from someone who did not care.
Right.
And I would tell my doctor, hey, I'm feeling this. And he's like, all right, let's send you next door. Because, like, my OB has, like, the machine, but it's really tiny, so you can't see anything. So he's like, all right, go next door.
Wow.
And he'll send me next door. So that was one of the cool things. And I don't know, like, that literally opened my eyes of how, when it came to, like, care for myself, care for my kids, I will not accept anything but the best, because that could have really compromised my life and my health.
Right.
So I don't play with any of that at all.
And that's what I hope that anyone who watches this gets out of this is, if you are not getting the answers that you feel like you need to do, that it's okay to move. They don't owe you anything. You are a customer. So my question is, as a man, we are really dealing with doctors who don't care. Yes. And especially when you're going through IVF, you are a number. And a lot of women in this chat can say that you are a number. And if you do your first round, which, again, we're not talking about like $500 here. We may be talking about, if you are paying cash and you don't have insurance, you may be talking about $10,000 to $20,000. Well, oh well, we don't know what to say. So, it's really important that these spaces exist, so hey, do you mind sharing your clinic?
Yeah, of course. Global Fertility and Genetics in Manhattan. I think it's Park Avenue, Manhattan.
Okay.
But there's 2 fertility clinics in there. So Global is on, I believe, the 7th floor, and then there's another one that other people go to as well. So there's 2 clinics, but he's in Global Fertility Genetics, and his name is Dr. Melvin Thornton.
Okay. When it comes to infertility and the IVF space, they want to know, you make them look good. So if you're not performing, which again already makes you feel like less than a woman anyway, you've already got to come here, that you're not performing and you're not getting great results, egg retrieval results, they will tell you 2 or 3 rounds and then they can't help you anymore. And that's why a lot of people like CNY, because they don't turn anybody away. Now, are their statistics low? Yes. But that's because they're taking every patient and trying to help every patient. There are a lot of clinics that won't help you as patients, even if you have the money, because you drive their statistics down. I'm going to look for IVF and I'm going to see their clinic and I see that they have, maybe 40%, 30, 50% chance of bringing my baby home versus this other clinic is 60 or 70. I'm going to go to the one that's going to give me a better chance. So not to look at statistics unless you're doing donor conception. That's when I tell you that you need to take those statistics. They're the ones who are choosing the donors. They are the ones who are stemming the donors. They're the ones who need to do their homework. And they all get graded on that too as well. And if they are not getting good results with their donors and their donor egg transfers, their donor egg live births, then maybe that may not be the clinic that you need to look at, that there may be something that they're not doing because they vet their donors. Now, me being 45 years old, trying to stem my own eggs, take that with a grain of salt, because if you're seeing that and they got really good statistics, that means they turned somebody away. Well, thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for coming. And I appreciate you. We thank you so much. And I'm going to ask this. because usually my last question is about connection. We've already talked about that. But what would you tell the woman who is struggling to conceive or even lost their tubes? What would you change, or what advice would you give them on the next steps and how to navigate that?
I would tell her, do not make your journey somebody else's. I had to learn that the hard way, because before having them, I would help so many people and I would see them bringing home their babies and it wasn't happening for me. And I would just say, okay, I need a minute out of this space. I need to get back into a good headspace. So once I started realizing their journey was not mine, I was able to be a little bit better with it. Another thing I would say is try to, like you said it already, try to get as many of the tests done before even jumping into the cycle, because that will definitely prolong you starting the main thing, which is the retrieval. So try to get everything that you get done as soon as possible. If you're going using your own IVF embryos or your own eggs, make sure that you are in the best shape that you could ever be. Start CoQ10. Some people don't swear by it, but that, you know, my egg quality was horrible. And once I started taking them, deducting some of the medications and some of the vitamins, I had, not only was I feeling better, but my quality was better as well. So I say, get everything you can done first. Focus on your mental health, focus on your overall health. Make sure you're in the best shape you could ever be. Make sure you're in the best health you could ever be. And also the main thing, never lose faith. Prayer changes a lot. Like, I'm very religious. I haven't been in a while, but I grew up in a Catholic church. It's a Caribbean thing. We, you know, pray. They used to say, like, for Haitian people, you know, the 3 L's. School, church, and home. So those are the 3 things that kept me going. I would have my moments, I would pray, and I would tell God, I know you give me the strength that I need. I know you're giving me this battle because, you know, I'm one of the strongest soldiers. And I know at the end of the day, even if I don't have a child and I do find love of being a mother some other way, I will appreciate it. And the thing that really, really kept me strong, I had a dog. I had her for 14 years. And it's almost like when I started praying to God, I felt that He kept her, because at that point when I started IVF, she was blind, she wasn't eating, she literally would stay most of the time at home. But once I started IVF, she started being the same dog that I used to be. She was more vocal, she was more happy, she was more everything. And unfortunately, I lost her after my last retrieval was finished and I banked my embryos. I felt like she knew they were coming because she made, oh my God, I'm crying. She made room and space in my heart for me to be able to accept having my children, because she passed away in December. And the next year, I ended up getting pregnant. And I feel if I didn't have her and I didn't really believe and I didn't pray, I wouldn't be able to accept the love that I have for my children now. And I haven't been able to replace that because, like I said, she was my first. She made this journey of being a woman who felt her body failed on her so much easier. She gave me the love and unconditional love. She may be a dog, but she really helped me in that space. But when she passed away, I was able to see a little bit clearer. I was able to understand my purpose. And every woman, you may not have the same journey, but we all come together and have the same battle and know at the end, all of this heartache and everything we're going through will be worth it. And whether it happens today, tomorrow, a year from now, your time is coming. You know, pray on it, keep believing, keep manifesting. I was really big on that. And affirmations, they help. You can, you will succeed. Those were the things I always said to myself.
Amen. Amen. Once again, I appreciate you. I hope that someone sees this story and now they know how to move forward. Make sure y'all pick up Queen T, okay? Y'all pick her up, support her, go on Amazon,